Hey, this is Dr. Takima Dorsey with another wonderful season kickoff of leadership in the urban market. As an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a leader, as a civic engagement, as an individual, as a scholar, and always trying to bring solutions to areas of problems, there is always new and exciting things to learn each and every day. But just to wake up each day is a blessing in itself. Recently, you may remember that I have published 65 books within a 60-day time frame, and I'm super excited about it. The number one, or the focus, or the foundation, I should say, of why these books came to light is really about breaking the cycle of poverty. And one of my new books, called Breaking the Cycle of Poverty Through Innate Skill Set Development, for me is extremely important, because what we found from COVID-19 is that the unemployment line wasn't biased to anyone, whether you had a degree or you had no degree, and including those with doctoral degrees. So skill set development is an extremely important topic, and not just topic, but development of it. One of my skill sets happened to be the gift to gab, which is advocacy through interviewing and things like that. So hence why leadership in the urban market exists. Being on the air since 2010, almost 12 years now, I've had the pleasure to interview individuals across the globe, gone syndicated, prime time, and the list continues. But I love the flexibility of being able to gain new knowledge, learn new things, and interview exciting individuals. Today, I have a wonderful colleague of mine that I've known for just as long as I've had the opportunity to actually be on the airwaves. And I'm excited to pick his brain in areas of leadership, education, and community partnership. So without ado, I am going to allow my colleague to introduce himself to learn a little more about him. When you talk about the unconventional approach, Dr. Perry, that's what we need to right about now, right? Education, there is no quick fix. And there was never a quick fix. There isn't one now, and there will never be one moving forward. However, there is an unconventional pathway that is not tapped in. And what do I mean by that? Community partnership. That is our next topic. And when you talk about the unconventionality of what needs to be done, as an educator for over 30 years, K-12, undergrad, graduate, doctoral level, having a for-profit and a nonprofit business, working with the school systems, advocating with the school systems, and knowing the barriers that exist within school systems, we don't have enough community partnerships. Dr. Perry, it sounds great in theory, but in practical application, the businesses within the community would ideally be a dynamic partner and ally for school systems. In our education component, you talked about gaps from all three levels of students: higher, in the middle, low achieving. You mentioned we need to love on our students, but guess what? Education alone cannot do it. But one of the things that's lacking in most communities, and when I mean most communities, not just an urban scenario, it's not just a rural scenario, it's just in general, is a lack of community partnerships with the school system. For our business owners out there that run nonprofits, that run for-profits, that happen to be running an after-school program, that happen to be running a before-school program, or that's looking for funding to kind of work inside, I wonder if you could answer this question. How difficult has it been for you to gain that partnership or be awarded a bid? But most importantly, I want to hear from you, Dr. Perry, on your views of community partnerships, partnering up with school systems or districts that can help close the gaps, not just for our underserved youth, but for youth and parents alike. What are your takes on that topic?
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey. That was an excellent question. And again, you did an excellent job in bringing us up to this discussion. I think, Dr. Dorsey, a lot of community partnerships has to first start at the federal level. We need more federal dollars to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, as well as educational institutions. We need to level the playing field. In order to level the playing field, there needs to be funds. During the COVID period, nonprofits played a tremendous role in helping people where a lot of the institutions failed individuals. The nonprofits stepped in. Some of them had clinics where the parents, as well as the children who needed a place to stay if they got kicked out of their apartments, they facilitated those services. They also facilitated the health services for parents and kids that needed shots. They also facilitated the communication process. A lot of the nonprofits were set up as broadband stations. They helped bring internet connections to communities of color, especially or communities where there were not the infrastructure for broadband, where you can go to your Starbucks and sit there and interact with folks through the computer. In some communities, they don't have that, right? And so when we talk about community partnerships, we need to talk about how do we strengthen the community organizations that are currently in place, and how do we get them the type of training, the leadership training, the effective managerial training where they can sustain themselves so they can be in position to partner with community colleges or four-year colleges. So there's things that the community has to do to prepare themselves, because that's a major challenge from a community organization. Let's say you have a building and you're doing some tutoring with kids in the community, and now you're working with the university. There has to be guidelines in place where that makes that that relationship amenable, and it also makes it where both parties can achieve whatever their benchmarks are. And so that's one thing we have to think about when we start partnering these community organizations with the universities. But the more important part of this, how do we get community organizations and colleges on the same level, on the same playing field? As you talked about from the educational standpoint, high schools do things one way, colleges, community colleges do things another way, and four-year colleges, they totally do it their own way. So how do we get all these organizations that are important for the development of our youth and for the sustainability of them in the educational standpoint, in a business standpoint, and all those crucial areas of one's development, how do we get them on the same page? And I think what it takes is kind of a bondage of thought. We have to do, as I call, an urban assessment, where folks like yourself, Dr. Dorsey, go in and you assess where the strengths and weaknesses are at the school stage, the elementary stage, the junior high, the high school, and then you also assess the communities and see how they have strengths and weaknesses and how we can work on those strengths and weaknesses at that level, and then how four-year colleges can work on their strengths and weaknesses in dealing with the two-year colleges and in dealing with community organizations and dealing with the school system. So I think you have to take a holistic approach. We're going to call it the unconventional approach in sewing all these different associations or entities together to make a holistic approach in developing our kids to be more competitive in a global society. And that's only done from cradle to grave. is when we start at birth, is when the community takes a special interest in those kids, where the neighbors look after all the kids in the community and not just their own. They watch out for everybody. And where we have community organizations like Junior Achievement, that was an organization I had the privilege to be involved in when I was coming up, where it taught junior high school students to high school students how to be in business, how to make a product, how to sell that product, how to interact with folks in the community. That was a program that helped a lot of junior high school students see their pathway into college, into business, and into becoming entrepreneurs. At the same token, we need sports programs. We need programs like the programs that you have been developing that shows that brings out the leadership qualities in young kids. And when you can bring out that leadership quality in young kids, they are more open to learn. They're more open to be coached. And so as we start to look at community programs with after-school tutoring, after-school mentoring, the arts, poetry, educational support, when we start looking at those community organizations and seriously funding them and not asking them to support the school system on a voluntary basis or on a low budget basis, but give them enough financial support and national training where we're training those community-based organizations to know how to deal with kids or folks that are challenged. That's important. And for the business world, if you think about this, Dr. Dorsey, at some point in history, a lot of our young scholars who passed away, but they were young at the time, they learned by following their parents to work, and whatever that parent did, if it was a shoemaker or if it was a dentist or whatever that position, wherever that position that person held, those kids would be there watching their parents, and they would learn firsthand on what to do. And so I'm saying that to say, if we can start integrating these young kids at an early stage in the business world, like during the summer, we can get them in summer jobs and summer programs where they can not just be sweeping streets, but be in meaningful employment situations. We can have we can have a learning process that the kids can learn from hands-on knowledge. And that's what we need. Exponential learning. Thank you very much.
Yes, no, and absolutely. And you hit on so many wonderful areas, but I want to go back to what you talked about, needing funding from the federal level, from the top down. But we've often found, Dr. Perry, and you and I know this, and most listeners that are out there, is that in order for federal funding is there, but it's not necessarily the federal funding is not available. It's the lack of substance, a business proposal, the proper person's visionary coming across on paper in terms of their targeted audience, in terms of how they sell themselves, in terms of vested time, personnel, support, marketing plan, and things like that. So how do you, as a person that has the opportunity where you work at the 4-year college, you have a doctoral degree, and you are an advocate on the community college in that transition, what would you say to business owners out there, whether they're for-profit, nonprofit, or in the mix of trying to launch a business? And as we're talking about these community partnerships, because that's where it comes down to, right? Whether we're trying to close the gap in education, enhance leadership, tackle unemployment, underemployment, homelessness, poverty, what would you strategically offer for those individuals out there in terms of wisdom or strategic blueprint, knowledge base, having to not know this in theory, but in practical application, in really preparing themselves to become federally funded, and then being, as you mentioned, being able to align themselves to be viable candidates to do work with the community college and or the four-year college for success.
Yeah, that was a good question there, Dr. Dorsey. And I often say, don't go for the okey doke. There are a lot of folks out there that say, I can train you in 2 weeks on how to get grants, but you haven't even set yourself up in a strategic way to be ready to do anything that relates to the grant that you're writing about. So you got to build the infrastructure. And as it relates to businesses, I often tell individuals, everyone can do what they're good at. You know, if I make shoes, I'm good at making shoes, but that doesn't necessarily make me an all-around business person. Because when I start the business, I have to know how to set it up. LLC, sole proprietor, whatever type of businesses you want, whatever type of way you want to set your business up, you need to understand that process. And so I often say that you need to immerse yourself in the learning process of what you want to do before you do it, and enroll in programs that are certifiable programs. Some programs through the SBA, programs that are offered through your colleges, where the School of Business or other areas may offer programs that will help prepare you to start your business, programs that have been vetted, that are out there. So from a business standpoint, it's one thing to hang up your shingle and to start selling lemonade. And then before you know it, you start to sell so much lemonade that you're adding additional products to your lemonade stand. So it's not just a lemonade stand now, it's a full-blown business where you have employees and you have to pay the taxes. You have to know how to set it up. And so we need to prepare ourselves for that in business. And I think the way to do it is to work with your community. There's a lot of community-based nonprofit organizations, as you said, Dr. Dorsey, that are there to assist folks in starting their own business. They assist them in coaching and mentoring, as well as economic development, business plans, because a business plan, as you well know, is your plan to success. Without a plan, you're just going to fail because things doesn't happen off of osmosis alone. You have to have a strategic plan in order to have a sustainable situation. So I look at businesses as a key to our children's success. Because why do they go to school? They go to school to work somewhere. And if the business, the community, and the school aren't talking to one another, then what you have is a student that matriculates through this, K to 12, and then matriculates through community college to college. And then he finds himself out there with this book knowledge, but he doesn't have viable work experience that helps him to enter in the job market. Yes, you can work at some of your fast food places. Yes, you can work at your grocery stores. Yes, there's places that you can work to have that summertime youth experience. But as we start to develop our resume of work, we have to start looking at where do we want to be in life. If it's sports, then we need to be in sports type of jobs that are meaningful from the management standpoint, to the sales standpoint, to the science, technology, engineering, and math of whatever that industry has for us. And as we start to understand from a business standpoint what businesses do, from when we start to better understand what communities should or should not do, and when we start to understand what educational institutions, what their roles and responsibilities are, and when we can unconventionally mesh all these entities together where they're working on the same page, you'll find that we can develop economically, because now we're creating folks that can go into this job market, young kids that can go into job markets and perform at a high level. But we're also helping our jobs, our self-employed individuals, our corporations to do better, to be more inclusive, to be more equitable in their efforts into making a workforce that looks like us all. I yield to you.
Absolutely. I'm excited to always learn and to hear from individuals that are a part of the show and that have an insight far greater than I do. And so, as a leader and as a person that is always learning to hear from others and to learn from new individuals, I absolutely thank my guest today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next show. If you have any comments, do reach out to us as you have the opportunity to do so. And we look forward to seeing you on the next broadcast. So until then, have a great and wonderful day. And remember that all things are possible as long as you believe and have faith of a mustard seed. Peace out.